Okay, for this next video, we're going to talk about solving systems using multiplication. So you can see by our goal down here that we want to solve systems of equations by eliminating a variable using multiplication and then addition. So you're actually doing two things here. You have to multiply, then you're going to follow by that up with an addition. Okay, so elimination by using multiplication. So remember, the whole point here is to eliminate one or the other variable, but in order to do that, they have to have a similar coefficient, typically the opposite coefficient. Looking at our x's and our y's, it looks like the 10 and the 5 here are more compatible than the 5 and the 3, because in order to make the 10 or the 5x look like the 10, all I got to do is multiply this bottom equation by 2. So I'm going to rewrite the top one here, 10x plus 5y equals 30. And actually, I'm going to take it a step further because we are going to do addition afterwards. We want the signs to be opposite, so I'm going to multiply by a -2 instead of just a +2. So when I distribute my -2 here, I get negative 10x, and then a -2 times the 3 is going to give me a positive 6y equals, and -2 times -7 is going to give me 14. And now, because these have opposite signs, all I have to do is add these two together. The x's will cancel out, and I have 5y plus 6y, which is going to give me 11y. And then on the right-hand side, I have 30 plus 14. That's going to give me 44. And if I divide both sides by 11, you can see that y is going to equal 4. So half of our solution here is 4 for the y value. Now I want to go back and solve the x value, which means I got to go back to one of my original equations. Well, this one that's on the bottom here, the 5x, appears to have smaller numbers, so I'm going to use that one. So 5x minus 3, and in place of y, I'm going to put the value of y, which is 4, in there, and then keep solving. So I'm going to simplify a little bit. So 5x and then -3 times 4 is -12, and that's going to equal -7. And then I'm going to add the 12 to both sides. So 5x is going to equal, now when I add 12 to -7, I end up with a positive 5. So when I divide by 5 on both sides, I get x equal to 1. So the other half of the solution here is 1. So the final solution is 1, 4. Notice that we had the times first by 2, then we added. Okay, so we're going to do elimination using multiplication again. So we look at our x and y's, we figure out which one is easier to match up. Can I make the 4 and the 13 match up, or the 7 and the 14 match up easier? And the answer is obviously the y's, so the 7 and the 14. So in order to do that, I want to multiply the bottom one. Now, to make a 7 become a 14, I'm going to multiply by 2. But remember, I want to end up with opposite signs, so I want to put a negative sign there. So I'm going to bring the 13x over plus 14y equals 59. And then when I distribute this here, I'm going to bring the answer underneath. So -2 times the 4x is going to give me -8x. And the -2 times the 7y is going to give me a -14y. And then the -2 times the 37 is going to give me a -74. Now, since these are opposite signs right here, in order to get them to eliminate or cancel from the problem, I simply just have to add these together. So 13x plus a -8x is going to leave me with 5x. The y's cancel out, or they eliminate. That's the whole purpose of elimination, is to get rid of one of the variables. Bring down the equal sign. And now when I add these two together here, I get 15. Actually, I get a -15. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 5, so that x ends up equaling -3. So half of my solution is -3. I got to solve for the other half, which is the y value. Now, when I go to solve for the y value, I want to put this -3 in place of x. But I want to go back to one of the original equations. If you look at the bottom one, it appears to have the least amount of work involved, so I'm going to substitute it there. So in place of that x, I'm going to put my -3 plus 7y equals 37. Continue to simplify, so -12 plus 7y equals 37. Now I want to add 12 to both sides, so I'll have 7y equal to, now 37 plus 12 added to that side will be 49. Divide by 7, and y equals 7. So the final solution here is -3, 7. Okay, for this next example, they want us to multiply both equations to eliminate a variable. And the way we do that is, number one, we look to see, do either of the coefficients have opposites? Well, you see right here we have opposite signs on the x values. So the first thing I'll do is find out what is the least common multiple of 2 and 3, and that's going to be a 6. So I'm going to put parentheses around the top one, and to turn that 3 into a 6, I have to multiply by 2. And to make the 2 become a 6, I've got to multiply by 3. Now, the reason we're looking for the ones that have opposite signs is because I want to end up adding after I multiply instead of having to deal with subtraction. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute here, and I'll get 6x. Distribute the 2 to the 4, and I get positive 8y. Distribute the 2 to the 22, and I'll get a negative 44. Don't forget to distribute all the way through. And then 3 times the negative 2 will give us a negative 6x. And the 3 times the 3 will give us a positive 9y. And the 3 times the negative 8 will give us a negative 24. Now, because the signs or the coefficients of x are opposite in signs, all I got to do is add them together, and the x's will cancel out. But I still have 8y plus 9y, which give me 17y equals, and then negative 44 plus a negative 24 will give us a negative 68. And then when I divide both sides by 17, y ends up equaling a negative 4. So half of our solution here is negative 4 for y. To figure out the x value, we're going to go back to the original problem. So we'll go back over here. And I'm going to choose the one that has the smaller numbers in it to work with, which is the second equation. So I'm going to substitute this y with negative 4. So negative 2x plus 3 times negative 4 equals negative 8. Simplify, so negative 2x. This is going to give me a negative 12 equals negative 8. Add 12 to both sides, so negative 2x is equal to positive 4. Divide both sides by negative 2, and x equals negative 2. So the final solution is negative 2 and negative 4. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing on this one. The first thing we want to look for is which ones already have opposite signs. So you can see the y values here have opposite signs. So what is the least common multiple of 6 and 9? Well, it turns out that it's 36. So I have to multiply 6 by 6 to get 36. And on the bottom, I have to multiply 9 by 4 to get 36. So I'm going to distribute those. So 6 times 11 is going to be 66x minus 36y. And that's going to equal 150. Then I want to distribute here, here, and here. And that's going to give me 12x plus 36y equals 240. Now, because the signs are opposite right here, all I got to do is add those together and those will cancel out. But I still have at the beginning, I still have 78x equal to 390. Next step is to divide by 78, and x will end up equaling 5. So half of my answer here is 5 for x, and I got to solve for the y value. So I'm going to go back to the bottom equation here because the numbers are a little bit smaller to deal with. So I'm going to substitute a 5 in place of x. So 3 times 5 plus 9y is equal to 60. Simplify, 15 plus 9y equals 60. Subtract 15 from both sides, 9y equals 45. Divide by 9 on both sides, y equals 5. So my solution ends up being exactly 5, 5. For our next example, they want us to write and solve a system using multiplication. So we got George's comic book. He has a collection that consists of single issues that cost $4 each, and then paperbacks that cost $12 each. I might have to multiply those together, no problem. He has 100 books in all. Okay, that sounds like a total, so I'm going to box that in. His collection cost him $616. That sounds like a total also. They want us to write and solve a system of equations to determine how many singles, so I want to know how many singles and how many paperbacks he has in his collection. So I want to identify my variables first. So I don't want to use an S for singles, the number of singles. So I'm going to use N to stand for. So that's going to equal the number of singles in his collection. And then I'm going to use P for paperbacks. So P equals number of paperbacks, and that'll be the number of paperbacks in his collection. And remember when we said this 100 up here? Well, that's a total number of books. Well, that comes from the number of singles, which is N, plus the number of paperbacks, P, and that total is going to equal 100. So I took care of this 100, but I also have this total of 616. Well, that total comes from the cost or the value of the singles, and the singles were $4 each, so the singles are going to be 4 times N. And to that, I'm going to add the cost or the value from the paperbacks, which is $12 each, so 12p. And the total cost of those two should equal 616. That's the information that was given. Now, when I look at these two, I want to decide which variable I want to cancel, the n or the p, because both the n and the p in the first equation have coefficients of 1. However, the n on the bottom has a coefficient of 4, so it'd probably be easier to make those two match. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the top equation by -4, so my coefficients will be the same but opposite signs. So when I distribute, I get -4n minus 4p equals, and don't forget to distribute all the way to that 100. That will give you -400. bring the other equation over. So 4n plus 12p equals 616. And the reason I chose to multiply by a negative is so all I got to do is add these together. Well, the n values right here will cancel out. And I'm left with negative 4p plus 12p, which is 8p. And that's going to equal now negative 400 plus plus the 616 is going to give me 216. And when I divide both sides by 8, p ends up equaling 27. Now remember, this is the number of paperbacks. So he's got 27 paperbacks. And if I want to solve for the number of singles, all I got to do is go back to that original problem, that n plus p, and in place of p, substitute 27, and then solve for n, and then n ends up equaling 73. So he's got 73 singles and 27 paperbacks. Okay, for this next example, this next word problem, if you want, go ahead and pause the video and attempt to solve it, and then restart it, and I'll show you how to solve it. Okay, so this one is a software company. They have releases of two products, a home version of their photo editor which costs $20, and a professional version which costs $45. Okay, so the professional costs $45, what was the other one? The home costs $20. The company sells 1,000 copies of the photo editing software, and they earn a revenue of $38,075. Write and solve a system of equations to determine how many home versions and how many professional versions were sold. Well, they already defined the variables for us. So H is the number of home versions sold, and P is the number of professional versions sold. But remember, back up here, we sold 1,000 copies. That's both types. So our first equation there would be number of home versions plus the number of professional versions should equal 1,000. Now the revenue, that's money, that comes from these costs that are up here, the 45 and the 20. Well, the home costs $20 each, so that would be $20 times the number of home plus, and the professional was $45 times P, and their total revenue that were sold here was $38,075. Now when it comes time to decide which variable I want to eliminate, I want to use the one that requires the least amount of work. Well, the two coefficients I have at the bottom are 20 and 45. Well, 20 is smaller than 45, so I'm going to multiply this top one by negative 20, so my h's will cancel out. So I want to distribute that through and end up getting negative 20h minus 20p equals negative 20,000. Then I'll bring the rest of that second equation over. 20h plus 45p equals 38,075. And then since the coefficients out here in front are the same, all I got to do is add them together. The h values will go away. They'll cancel out. So what I'm left over with is negative 20p plus 45p, which is 25p. And that's going to equal, and I got negative 20,000 plus 38,075. This is going to leave me with 18,075. And all I got to do now is divide by 25. When I do that, I end up with p equaling 723. So the professional version, they sold 723 copies of the professional version. You should write that in a complete sentence. And if I go back and substitute that, h plus 723 equals 1,000, and then solve for h, which is the home version, so you can see that we end up having 277 copies of the home version sold.